Hey, what's good everyone? Local Lifespan here. It's been 1 week since doing the horizontal conveyor bearings, so now it's time to do the lift bushings right here, as well as the leaf springs for the conditioner and the blade. And since we're in there, I'm going to swap out the coil springs for the blade bracket. So let's go ahead and switch views here so I'll show you exactly how I'm going to do that. Alright, so I'm draining the water out before we get everything off. What I've done so far is I got the motor is loose. As soon as we back it back in here, we'll stick it to the side. As well as we took the bolt off for the wash water and the ice making water, because these things are going to come up. As well as if you unloosen this set screw, and I'll give you the size here in a minute, this thing is going to pop right up in the air, just like, basically just like that. So what we're going to have to do is we usually tie these three together. I also have the hose clamps loose. I'm going to work it off a little bit with some pliers and try to get it loose. And the next thing we're going to do is, after the water gets done draining out, we're going to back the machine up, stick it on blocks, and loosen these two bolts right here, take the pressure off them, slide them out, lift the yokes in the air, the lift bar in the air, and drive the machine forward. All right, so let's give this thing a few minutes for the water to drain out, then we'll come back and get on it. All right, I got the machine empty. Critical step there, you don't want to forget that. You pull these hoses off, you're gonna have water all over yourself. So what I just did is I took a screwdriver and a little hammer and I kind of tapped it just a little around and got this hose right here loose. And if you twist it, I don't know if I could do it with one hand. I twisted it with one hand, so I have it broken loose. So let me go ahead and break this one loose, then we'll go ahead and block up the conditioner and get this bolt loose and continue on with the process here. As you see, I got this one loose right here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go and close my valves and yank these things off right here. There we go. There's one. There's two. And these hoses right here are loose. So the next step is going to be to lower the conditioner down on some blocks. So we got to do right now, because these things are going to be in the way, I usually tie these things up with some blocks and some string or rope or whatever I got to get them out of the way. So let me go ahead and do that next here. All right, the conditioner is blocked in the air. The next step is to remove these bolts to separate the conditioner from the lift arm. But before I do that, I'm going to use a 3/4 wrench to unloosen the lock nut on the leaf springs, the tension on the leaf springs right here. Then I'm going to loosen the tension on the leaf springs. I want to get the tension off the leaf springs before we remove the conditioner from it. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think it's a step that should be done before rather than after. So again, to get this nut off here is a 3/4 inch wrench, and to get this square bolt here, a 15mm socket is what you're going to use. I believe a 1/2 inch wrench would fit around that, but a 15mm socket will allow you to back this thing off. Since we're taking the leaf spring out, I'm going to back the bolt up almost all the way to the top. And as you see right here, these leaf springs just pop right out. This little dimple right here that they pop into. Same with this one right here. So just pop out now. And get this little dimple it falls into. So let's go ahead and remove this bolt here and this bolt here with an inch and we got 1 1/16 and 1 1/8. 1 1/16 on the nut, 1 1/8 on the bolt. That's off. Just going to hit this side. So I believe the next step is going to be to take some pressure off these things. There you go. All right, so we should lift this thing up. And we are separated. So I want to make sure that these things are going to come off. There we go. Let's go ahead and take this one off. me get this off. Put that together.
Well, that's all.
No, there's not.
No, it's gonna be hard.
Not too much to see here, but I'm just gonna flip it over. Just gonna walk it back. There we go. All right, to get this spring off here, what I did, I just took this thing. See if I can do it again on this one. There we go.
That's what they teach you at Zamboni school.
Yep.
See, we're the grinder, boys.
Gonna get the grinder. I'm gonna hold the bolt up, and Andy's gonna grind from the other side. I don't think. Oh, there we go. Woo, that's hot. So the bolt was flattened from so many years of putting the plates on it, so we cut it short, and it was just easier to cut it off. So let's go ahead and slap these springs back on. We'll go ahead and thread the eye bolts on and put the springs on. So of course this side has more stuff to deal with. Slip it right through there. Andy's on the other side. Put the bolt in. You want to thread it as much as you can. And basically you're going to thread it all the way to the end.
Okay.
Then we'll get it on and we'll get the wrench on it and we'll bolt it so it's totally tight, and that's how you set it. You want to make sure they're both the same. I'll slide the bar in here. 9/16. Alright, so we're tightening down the other side here. So the next thing we're going to do basically is loosen that tension on that leaf spring, pull the leaf springs off for the blade. Then we're going to slide it back over here and start loosening the bolts and drop the main lift bar off the machine and replace the bushing bolt combination. Looks like Andy was a little bit faster on this side.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I know. I think this one, I think we threaded a lot more. All right, so I got that one over there loose. So with a 7/8, I believe, where we're at right here. Yeah, so it's a 7/8 socket here. I'm going to loosen the bolt that goes to the leaf springs for the blade. Sorry. And with this, you're going to have to loosen it all the way up to get the tension off. And I went and sprayed, you can see right here, some of that Royal Coil. I think when we get the machine back down on the ground, we'll pop this thing off. All right, so let's come over here. We're gonna start fishing, pulling the main bolt, the big daddy of them all, off the lift bar right here. Because the lift bar is basically, this bolt right here is the pivot point for the lift bar. The conditioner, the yoke, sorry, I took them off right here. This yoke thing mounts right here. Then the conditioner mounts right here, and the whole thing pivots on this lift bushing right here with that arm way back there. You can see that right there. And that thing right there, that thing being greased, that's where this one right here. The top part of that is this one, the bottom part is that one, and this one right here is this bearing right here. And you can see why everything is usually done at once, because you get to that bearing really easy with everything off. So it's kind of the reason why if you do one thing, you might as well do it all. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get these bolts off. All right, so we got the main lift arm off. Got the bolts off. Popped out these little, where'd it go? It rolled somewhere. Where'd you roll to? These little rings right here. We got those things out. We got the bushing out. So now we're just gonna start slapping it all back together. First thing we're gonna do is put that little ring back in on both sides. Put this thing in, slip the bushing in, start bolting it back together. I'd say we're pretty much at the halfway point. There's one thing to mention too, these things, a long time ago, we had a bolt break on this thing. This is what keeps the tension on the leaf spring for the conditioner. So if you haven't done this in a long time, you may want to think about ordering some of these things. It's a bracket with a bolt, or just replace the bolt. I don't know, I replaced the bracket one time. I think that we had a bracket once break, and as well as a bolt break on the 500 over there. All right, let's go ahead and start slapping it back together here. Start slapping these things on. Make sure that your zert is facing out.
That's the one I got for the axle
Alright, next step is to put these yokes on here. We already put the compression fitting, I don't really want to call it, in the bushing in there. So, or no, the bushing, I guess the bushing's right here.
Yeah, these are the ones.
So, you gotta,
Small ones?
yeah, the small ones. So it's gonna put the bushing in, make sure that your zert's facing outward, and your zert's facing backward on this one. We got the bushing bolts on the arm put together. We got one more bolt to put on, but first we're gonna put the leaf springs on. The magic of editing. So you just slide, there's this little dimple here, and you slide it in there until that little dimple falls in. And we put 1 1/4 to 3 turns, depending on how old your spring is. So since they're brand new, we're gonna put a 1 1/4 turn on these springs. Yeah, I can see that. Go ahead and check out the video on how to adjust the tension on these things if you want to see how to adjust the tension on these. Alright. Okay, next up is to get the conditioner back down on its back there. We still got to replace the leaf springs on the blade, but I think it's going to be easier to pull them out when you're back down on its side. Alright, these are a little bit more difficult than the old 500. If the old 500, you can just pull these things right out. Like it almost wants to come out. It doesn't want to come out. So we're going to loosen this bolt right here.
Oh, this is different. Don't need this.
Oh yeah, this one.
That's everything has to be recessed over there for being next to the boards.
Yeah. I think that's threaded in on the side.
Oh. Going the wrong way.
Back that out. Oh, there you go. All right. Are we gonna have to remove this thing too? Yeah, with this thing in the way and this thing here, it makes it much harder to get these things off. All right. So. I'm gonna put some never sees on here. That way it won't be so hard to get off next time. It wasn't really hard to get off this time, but here's my pencil. Mark a mark right here. I'm gonna do 4 turns. Two. Uh-oh. The power just went off on us. There's 3. Go ahead and turn it off. Yeah, it's gonna do its 20-minute cycle. There's 4. All right, let's go back over here to the other side.
To see if they got to come out later and replace the cable. And you know, it's like trying to get into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell me a and they
So I have these things right here that are left over, and it took me a while to figure out where they, you know, Zamboni sent me some extra parts basically. Essentially, these things go way back here, and they hook. I don't know if I get a picture of this here. I'm kind of flustered at this point. So
gotta edit again.
You gotta edit all the so some more grease I gotta clean off, but those tension bushings, rings go in there, but it's probably something I probably should replace here in the future is that bolt right there and the bolt on the other side that hooks the hydraulic cylinder to the machine. So I'm not going to replace these ones because I already got this far into it and I'm not going to do it. I'm visiting this thing here again. All right, got all the lift bushings back on. We got our leaf springs on, all the tension set. Just going to back up the machine and hook it to the conditioner right here. A little different getting on this machine here. Okay, go ahead and mount the molder on here. Where's my chain? I get the belt that goes on first. We'll slap this chain on here. There we go. Chain on there. Hands all greasy now. All right, there you have it. Andy, I got everything slapped back together. While I was putting the chain and belt on over here, Andy was finishing put the controls on, the blade, wash water, and ice making water. Let's get those hoses tight. He went through and greased everything. Thank you, Andy. We put the blade that was on there already because we only had a few days use on it. There's no use replacing the blade with a nice sharp one. We just put the other one back on there. We're good to go. Everything went pretty smooth. You only had one kind of setback, or kind of, not setback, kind of overlook, kind of mess up on my part. And it kind of goes to when you're only doing this once every 5 years. And I did this maybe 3 years ago on our old machine because I did more extensive work to it. Also, I must say I got a little confused. And again, I don't do this every week or every year or so, but I did get confused with some of the bushings, these tension bushings that came, because I guess what I was thinking is that there's 3 sets of bolts and 3 sets of the copper sleeves and 3 sets of these, and I'm thinking 3 sets right there, 1, 2, 3. But that's not exactly how it went, and that's just my bad for not remembering and not just not getting totally organized or whatever you want to call it. So, but that's why shooting this video is going to be good for me, so I can go look back at this and remember exactly what I should do. But anyway, what happened is that these tension bushings right here. There's a set that came with this bolt here and this bolt here, and I thought that these ones right here were for this bolt here, and they're not. So when I got there, I'm like, called Zamboni, talked to Don, and after him explaining to me 3 times because I wasn't separating these things from the bolts, kept on telling me, but I wasn't really listening. Sorry, Don, but I finally sunk in that these things right here go back there, and it connects the lift arm to the hydraulic ram. And essentially, like if you look at this picture right here, this hydraulic ram, this part right here, this grease part, this hooks to the chassis of the machine, so to say, and this ram part here on the bottom hooks to the lift arm, and it's kind of a pivot point. So as it goes up and down, it pivots on that hydraulic ram. So that's where these bushings are for. It's for the connection for the hydraulic ram to the lift arm. However, I guess, if you do this yourself, what I recommend is that when you get the bushing kit, to also ask for this thing right here, because this is the pin that hooks the lift arm to the hydraulic ram and goes on these bushings. Now, I guess I was just only supposed to replace these bushings and pull this pin out, and that's where these C-clamps are for, right there. So it doesn't come with it. So ask for it. I'll get a part number here for you. I'll list it there below so you know what to ask for. But if you get the bolt bushing kit, ask for this thing too, because it's probably a good idea to replace this. And at some point too, I think I'm going to go back here and probably maybe next summer and replace this one right here. And since I'm in there, I'm going to replace the top one too. I think that's going to be a little bit harder to get to, or maybe it's a little bit easier if that little access point on top there. But that's something I'm going to revisit here really soon. It won't take me too long to get everything off. I've done it enough times to be able to get this thing off in no time. So, and you can see why when you start doing one thing, it kind of leads to another. If you're going to do the lift bushings, you might as well do the lift springs. And if you're going to do the leaf springs and the lift bushings, you might as well hit that bearing wire in there. I do things in phases because we always don't have, the finances and whatnot. So, but anyway, if you're gonna go ahead and do something like this, you know, try to get all your parts all together, do it all at once, and definitely order this part right here, this pin right there, so you can do everything at once. That was a mess up and oversight on my part. Anyway, it is what it is, so hoping to pass it on to you guys so you guys don't make that same mistake as I did and forget that little pin right there. Alright, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. As always, I hope you learned something. And like the local ice man says, stay cool.